let's see. We are recording, so we are live, live, and very happy to have Patti Milligan. Should I call you doctor or just Patti? What's the?
Patty.
Okay, I'll call you Patti. But you do have a PhD among a whole bunch of other syllables and letters after your name. So obviously an expert in your field and very well known, even if not so much in the mainstream golfing world, but within the industry itself. You've done a lot of consulting. You're well known, so it'll be a very, very enlightening educational show for many who don't know your name, and I'm sure after this they will and be passing it to their friends. So that's a long way to say thank you for taking the time to come on.
Thank you for having me on, because I love anybody that wants to address anything in nutrition to better ourselves and better our golfers.
The golf coaching world is I don't want to say inundated, but it has had its moments, in particular over the past, let's say, 15 years of some very heated and serious debates. Everyone that out there that has followed the coaching world will know what I'm talking about. And lately it's gotten into some chipping and different theories on different things. But when I look at that, and I have followed nutrition for quite some time, I had some health issues myself. I had cancer many years ago, had some gut issues, and got that cleared up, at least what I think of. But going through that and leading up to it, at one time I wanted to be a doctor, so I had some background in health.
Sure.
But I tell my golf friends and colleagues, I say, if you guys and girls think that the golfing world debates are borderline crazy, you ought to jump into the nutrition world and take a look at what they go through, because we're not even scratching the surface. And one question I've been asking a lot of very expert guests lately is, why do you think it is that experts, like world-class experts in a particular field, we'll take nutrition as your discipline, why can two world-class and respected experts that know a lot look at the same data and get completely different opinions? It's to me, it's mind-boggling.
Yes. Well, and there's, I think, several reasons. I think the first reason that pops out to me is there's an inherent bias. So when you look at research, you either are looking at it to acknowledge what you believe or to reject what you believe. And unfortunately, we don't have a good way of taking that out of data interpretation. So I always like to say I look at nutrition agnostically. I don't try to be married to one or particular nutritional venue or not. I try to say individually what is going to meet our biochemistry needs. And that's probably best. But
Well,
yeah.
it's very interesting you say that, because I thought I was very well read and educated on an array of different things. It was my thesis that was going to be the book, which turned into a podcast. I thought I could do much easier way to do
Yeah.
it, information, get it out there than write a book. I'd rather much sit down and talk to people. But what I thought I was pretty smart at, when I got to talking to experts like yourself, world class, you, Dr. Stu McGill, the long list of Dr. Asher Goyle, of people I've had
Yeah.
on this show and others. And when I would ask them questions, and usually if they were elite, the elite of the elite, the answer would be, it depends. And it would drive me absolutely crazy. I just need an answer. Just tell me what to do. They
I
said, we
know.
can't do that, because there's so many variables involved, in particular
Yes.
for an individual, that are going to depend on what the remedy is for whatever the ailment you're looking to cure. And
Yes.
I understand it now. It took me a while. I call it the depends mountain that I had to climb to understand their thinking and rationale behind it. But it
Yes.
makes total sense now. When I say that to people, they think I'm crazy. Or sometimes they'll brush me off. Okay, I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah.
But your
Exactly.
industry, to what you said, to your point, is you're looking not just for you don't have a bias, agnostic, but you're looking, what does that individual need at that particular point in time?
Exactly. And there's a great researcher, and I hope everyone will look her up. She's a nutrition researcher, and her name is Dr. Aaliyah Crum. What a great name for a researcher, right? She's out of Stanford now. But when she was with Michigan, she did this phenomenal research where she took two groups of people and she measured, so biochemically, she measured what was going on in the body as they were ingesting a particular drink. And she had two drinks. I'll try to make this quick. Two drinks. One drink she called an indulgent shake, and the other one she called a sensible shake. And
Mm.
so she brought in the people and she drew their blood, and she was measuring a hunger satiety neurochemical called ghrelin. And I always like to remember it as growl. It's what
Hmm.
starts our hunger system. She measured before they had the shake, halfway through the shake, and 2 hours later. And so she fed the group the indulgent shake. And then she brought them back the next day and fed them a sensible shake and did the same measurements. Now, I guess intuitively, we would all say, oh my gosh, I bet the ghrelin levels fell dramatically after the indulgent shake because it was higher calories. It was 550 calories, supposedly. Sensible shake was 180 calories. And yet, here was the rub, the shakes were exactly the same calories and grams of protein. So what she said is it's mindset over milkshakes. She said what we believe in what we're doing changes our biochemistry dramatically. So the good news is, and then she went on at Stanford and completed a really killer study during COVID, where she said she took a group of people that were eating healthy, and she said, "Why are you eating healthy?" And half of the group said, "Oh, I'm supposed to eat healthy." It's a prescription, right?
Hmm.
It's kind of like walking the tight and narrow road. The other group said, I invite it into my life because I feel so good and blah, blah, blah. What she found there was all of the parameters for vitality and high energy were in the ones that ate it because they invited it in. The ones that were repelling it or doing it because they had dramatic biomarkers that were same as people who were ill. So there again, she said, mindset is everything with nutrition. So I think my first message is out there, believe in what you eat. Believe in what you eat, that it's doing your body good. Or check your mindset around what you're eating, because that can be a difference too.
How would you, and we can get into, I don't want to, we can't go into too far because there's so many different, like I said,
Yeah.
variables in the nutrition where we could sit here for years and not even scratch the surface is
Yes.
industry or researchers have already illustrated. And if you get on any chat room, like I said, nutritionists just seem to be, God, are they the most
Crazy.
fanatical, crazy?
Yeah.
Yes. But,
And it's $1 billion business too.
yes.
So
But what somebody might be thinking, either if they have a family member or loved one that has a horrendous diet, and they're thinking, well, this is what makes me happy and I feel good. But from what I've learned over the years, is that there is a medical component to eating a subpar diet, i.e., and we'll just label that as one of the, a very high sugar processed food diet. Might make somebody feel mentally okay and happy, or dopamine neuroepinephrine kick right in the beginning, but
yeah.
within
Yeah.
some time it's over time it's going to degrade their system at a greater level. How do
Yes.
you what do you say to somebody that might be
Yes.
listening that has a family member, loved one that's in that position, or they
Yes.
themselves are in that position and they want to get over this hump?
Yes, that's a great question. So, when I was working in the elite athlete world, we did this concept which was called eat, feel, perform. So I eat this, and it brings this ability to feel this. I feel high energy. I feel low anxiety. I feel like I can conquer mountains or not. And then how do I want to perform? So I would always say, can you eat for better sleep? Can you eat to lower anxiety? Can you eat for higher energy? Can you eat to calm your brain? And so by asking that question, when you eat something within 20 minutes, it has an effect on your body. That's how quickly we metabolize. So just in tuning up to awareness is first in anything with nutrition, is tying how you eat, feel, perform. And secondly, you are right. If we don't give it building blocks, I often will use the analogy of building a home. Most people understand you need 2x4s and nails and sheetrock and all of those elements. If you don't have those, it's not a house that will stand. And that's what happens to our body. Our body is there to survive every single day. So it will pull whatever out of those processed foods to serve it, but at time it erodes the 2x4s and they begin to rotten and fall right down.
Yeah, I was a junk food fanatic.
Yeah.
Growing up as a kid, I could eat cakes and cookies. And I never had an insulin rush. People used to tell me all the time, "Don't that make you sick?" And I said, "No, not until I was in my early to mid 40s did I feel what an insulin
Sure.
rush was." And my God, it was horrendous. But it
Yes.
was like I had a superpower, I guess, that was a negative in the long term, that I could eat a half a bag of Oreos and not get any insulin
Yeah.
rush. And it was
Yeah.
but obviously, as I got older, and of course, I went through the
Sure.
cancer, and the cancer thrives on glycogen,
Yes.
and it's so
Yes.
it's I had to go through that. But one thing along the way is, and as I've gone through this, let's call it a journey.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed was playing golf.
Yes.
That as I went, I did of course keto because that was so big
Sure.
7 8 years ago.
Absolutely.
Went
Yes.
through that, but the first thing I noticed was the mental dexterity, focus, stamina, etc., for a 4 hour, 4 to 5 hour round of golf plus warm up, in particular over 2 3 4 round tournaments, and then
Yes.
week after week after week, I was not gassing out 13th, 14th, 15th
Yes.
hole, whether it was second round,
Yes.
third round, whatever it was, depending on how many weeks I
Wow.
was on the road. Uh,
Yeah.
and and I that was glaring to me. And as soon as I had anything that was, if we go back to processed sugar, banana, or
Yeah.
you're out working hard, and you're walking or whatever, you're
Sure.
swinging. That's one thing. You need the fruits, and I don't think Peter Attia's information would discuss. You can't eat enough fruit to have your glycogen spike so high you're gonna have a
Yes.
rush.
Exactly.
But if you're eating potato chips and you're eating Snickers bars, I don't want
And
to cast
Oreos.
shade, and Oreos, yeah, definitely Oreos at the turn. I mean, you get this burst, but then all of a sudden your brain just has this complete letdown. But the thing for me was the ability to either control or not have excitement or anxiety of the mind was
Yes.
noticeably
Good
different.
point.
So I had
Yes.
more endurance.
Wow.
I was able to focus better. I didn't have these ups and downs. And I guess if I would have had stuff stuck onto my head where they could measure the waves, I'm sure it would have
Sure.
had a lot of big wave stuff, and it would have been much
Yeah.
smaller on the
Yeah.
keto. But it was noticeable,
Yeah.
noticeable difference. So to your, what I'm getting at is, to your point, if you have a reason or a purpose, or someone introduces you to the, not only tells you the benefits, but you can experience them. Give it 3 weeks or 3 months or 6 months of working with
Yes.
someone like
Yes.
yourselves, and then you're gonna see it, and then you're gonna, like, well, I want that feeling again,
Yes.
as opposed to just
Yes.
saying, well, eat these vegetables again. Well, this sucks.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, what we often would say is that we all grew up with the idea knowing that dietary changes over the long run would help our cholesterol, right? But that's a long-term benefit for a short-term gain. And we say eat, feel, perform is something immediate. You can eat it and then feel the difference. And then when you clear brain fog, it's wonderful. So good job on getting your awareness in line.
Yeah, so well, it was just, I mean, it was happenstance that I came about. I guess mine came about from trying to play at the highest level, where,
Yes,
and I'm
yes,
trying to think, if somebody out there listening that's a weekend golfer, or, we're in the spring now in the northern hemisphere, they're now,
yes,
hopefully they can get out and play multiple times a week, or however many times they're going to play. And I know it's a social aspect. So that has to play into the
yes,
equation. If they're going to have a beer, they're going
yes,
to have a drink, or whatever they're going to have. That
yes,
plays a part. That there's an interaction that
yes,
I would have to assume with your work. You have seen the mental positives of having a beer or whatever adult beverage they're going to drink, with the
sure.
association of enjoying time with friends. How do you
Yes.
balance that with some of your
Yeah,
clients?
well, the first thing I say is be a two-fisted drinker. We know that there's research, both ways on alcohol benefits, alcohol doesn't, but the biggest thing is it robs our body of hydration. And now, when you think of hydration, the first level of hydration, we think of the heart as the pump in our circulatory system. But that is not the key hydration. The hydration is cellular hydration. And all activity of converting food, nutrients to activity or energy, it happens in the cell. So we want to make sure that we have big, bulky cells full of hydration, and that's the first thing that alcohol does, is rob our cells of hydration. So being a two-fisted drinker, even though it's kind of a little bit tongue in cheek, it really is to be so conscious of, for every beer or alcoholic beverage, that you match it with popping a nice glass of water.
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
that, for number one. And secondly, I do think we have to keep celebration. So growing, raising kids, I would always talk about growing foods and celebration foods. And the biggest thing is knowing frequency. Like, do an audit. Like, how often do you do celebration foods on the golf course, right? Is
Hmm.
it every single hole that you're having a beer, or is it one after the event or one during? That makes a big difference. Frequency. So I would say, do be a two-fisted drinker, and then just be very aware of how often. Just, sets and reps, quite frankly.
Does there, at some point, do people have to have some self-reflection on determining whether their habits are becoming good or if they're becoming bad? Like we said, it's one thing to have a drink or two with somebody if you're following it with water, but it becomes another if you're, let's say you're golfing 2 or 3 times a week, and
Hmm.
you're having too many drinks, or you're having too
Yeah.
much junk food, and now it's become a habit and it
Yeah.
just feels good because it's habit.
Yeah.
If someone, let's say someone out there is average golfer, they're 16, some handicap, they play in a league midweek, and then they're playing on the weekend maybe once or twice if they're lucky. How do you work with them to tell them, look, you've come to me for help, so I have to tell you, you have gotten into, it's okay to have fun, but you have gotten into
Yes.
your, it's become a bad habit instead of a good habit. We got to change this, or else we know
Yeah.
where this road is going to end eventually.
Sure. Great question. And so the way that I work with clients are, number one is identify where their awareness is in terms of how often frequency is. And
Hmm.
secondly, just taking out judgment, because it's not good or bad that they do it. It's just how it erodes their body's energy over time. And usually with a few questions, we can get to the point right away, because I'll say, after you finish golf, how quickly does it take for you to recover from injury, from soreness, from overall energy? And very quickly, one or two will say, oh, goodness, I'm always sore, on my lower back, my hips. And I'll say, you know what, let's do a test. Let's take 3 weeks where maybe you take a fast from any alcohol, not putting judgment on it, more observation, and see how you feel. And no doubt, I have tons of clients come back going, darn it, I didn't want you to be right, but you're right, it made a big difference. So then they'll come up with their own plan. And often I'll take a calendar, I mean, as just an example, and say, you've got 4 tournaments or these weekend plays, and you're playing midweek. Which ones do you want to concentrate on having your best score and having more resilience when you finish? Maybe those you retire the alcoholic beverages for that time, and then indulge when you want to indulge.
In the coaching world, when we're working with somebody, depending on what they need with their swing, in a similar fashion that you
Yes.
say, what do you want? How often are you playing? When is your city championship, your member guest, your
Yes.
club championship, your tour? If you're mini tour, Corn Ferry, big tour, LPG, whatever tour you're playing, when do you want to peak? One of the majors,
Yes.
etc. Um, how do you get them to buy in or stay the course when they get, we call it getting in the weeds, when, so you
Yes.
start and they're all in because they know they have to change. It's the
Yes.
first, they identify, okay, I've got to
Yes.
change. The second stage is changing, and that's the hard one, because they get
Yes.
lost in that path, and now it's like they're in a dark room, they don't know how to navigate. How
Yes.
do you keep
Exactly.
them moving forward when they're not getting the results they want to yet? How do you coach
Yes.
them through that?
Yeah.
I think that's a,
Again,
a universal coaching uh,
yeah.
question.
Yeah, killer question. We break it down into parts. So, as you mentioned, when you're focused on what is the key tournament, the key score you want, you keep that in mind and you chunk it out, day by day or week by week. What does it look like Monday through Friday if you're playing on the weekend? How can you build up a capacity of hydration, number one? Making sure you have electrolyte mix in the water that you drink, making sure that you have a fair bit, and we can break this down if you want, but a fair bit of antioxidants and good healthy fats, so that the recovery rate of your musculature improves during that time. So I like to chunk it out, and then I really, honestly, I kind of turn it back over to them and put them in charge. Like, what does this look like to you? If you were coaching me, what would you tell me? And it always shocks me because they say exactly what I would say. And I'll say, well, Now, do you think you can do that? And then, more importantly, it's to recover them after they've blown it, if you will, or they've gone off the program or whatever, to just coach them back to understanding that the body is incredibly resilient. It will work with whatever you give it. So, if, again, especially talking about alcoholic beverages, there's two nutrients, and I'm kind of a functional nutritionist, so I go into supplements if you want to talk
Hmm.
about that.
Yeah.
But I don't use supplements as a case where you're masking bad nutritional decisions, because food is always first. But there's definitely some nutrients that you can take to mitigate the use of alcohol if that's what we're doing. And I'll say, let's give it a try. Let's give it 30 days and see how you do with or without the supplement.
I would probably say the majority, 75% of who people listening to this now are thinking, you got to tell me what some of these
I
supplements are,
know, I'm
because
sorry.
because if they're drinking their vodka tonic or their transfusion or their,
Yes,
whatever beer of choice they're drinking, and they're at the turn, and let's say they're on a golf trip,
yes,
3, 5, 7 days, they're definitely going to want to know what that
yes,
hangover cure is.
exactly. Yes, well, there's two.
Okay.
One is uh, one is making sure that you have enough, and they're kind of a mouthful of words, and I'll say them quickly, and then we can spell them if we need to. But one is using a foundation of what all of our cells use to neutralize any any nutrients or compounds that come into the body that don't serve the body. So alcohol would be one of those. Is glutathione. And glutathione is so key because it's called the master antioxidant. So it's kind of a ruler, it's kind of a queen in the body. Our cells use it every single day. And it's just so important to have a little bit more on board because now you have more, toxins on board, if you will.
Hmm.
And then the second nutrient may surprise you. It's actually found in broccoli sprouts
Hmm.
and it's called sulforaphane. And it's kind of a mouthful. It's an anti cancer nutrient, number one. But more importantly, what it does, I guess I want people to realize in this nutritional talk, everything happens in the cell. So we want to concentrate on the cell. And so it helps take out the trash of the cell. Because one of the areas I feel in nutrition that, and this kind of goes for cancer treatment too, that we often don't really pay attention to is how our body rids itself of the garbage. So we metabolize, and right now our brains are working overtime in our conversation with one another, and so we're producing a fair bit of metabolites that are trash, and we have to eliminate them from our body, and we do this beautifully every single day. However, as we age and as we have more insults, and I would call, alcohol being kind of an environmental insult, being out in the sun. Again, it's great. You're getting vitamin D therapy, but you're also getting more exposure to metabolites in the cell that your body's going to have to get rid of. It's kind of a burden, if you will. So that's where sulforaphane comes in, but it's in broccoli sprouts. So I had created a whole foods based travel system with food to help mitigate resilient or build resilience and mitigate jet lag. And this, interestingly enough, I had a group of women that were in their 40s that wanted more happy hours during the week, and they had young kids at home. And so they started taking my travel supplement as kind of a boozer supplement, if you will, and they saw incredible results. But I don't think it was tricky because there's three ingredients in the travel supplement. Number one, it produces more saliva, which I know we're going to talk about. And then secondly, it has broccoli sprouts in it, so it helps our body take out the trash of our cells. So it doesn't surprise me that these women would return after happy hour, pop in the travel supplement, wake up in the morning and feel ready to go. So I would say that might be something to consider as in the golfing world, especially moving into the season of spring and summer now.
How it, and I'm assuming that autophagy,
Yes,
the removal of wasted cells or the debris
yes,
cells, and so fasting, is that why the health benefits of fasting are so good for the nutrition,
exactly,
or the benefit of
exactly.
the body, not the nutrition?
Yes, yeah. In fact, very astute of what you said because we're our digestive tract is two sides. One is digesting the foods to get the nutrients to fill our cells with this great energy. Secondly, is removing all of those waste products and autophagy, as you said, removing all the dead zombie cells that linger because we lose cells every 21 days. So we become brand new people almost once a month.
The easiest way for golfers to realize it is like it's the pruning of a bush or a tree. If you don't
Hmm.
prune it, it's just going to grow everywhere. You have dead branches hanging off, and
Yes.
for those of you who know about grasses, maybe more so than your own gut, those branches, if they're partially alive or alive, the plant is still going to try to send food there for photosynthesis, and then
Yes.
it becomes more efficient or detrimental
Exactly.
to the healthy parts of the plant. So the same thing happens to our system. At least that's my understanding
Yes.
of it.
Thank you. No, brilliant. Brilliant. And actually, you bring up a good point. Uh, and I don't. You probably know way more than me about this, but just in the care of lawn care of golf systems, right? So there's a fair bit of chemicals used. I don't
Hmm.
know many golfing places that do all natural, and our body handles all of those metabolites. That when you shuffle your feet or you're swinging, and you get tufts of the dirt or soil on your body, you're also taking in those toxins. The skin is our largest organ. So that's where sulforaphane and glutathione also help the body just bolster itself in a pruning situation.
Do you think that, I mean, if you look at religions of the world, and I don't want to get off on a tangent on too far on this,
Yeah.
but in almost every religion, there are periods of
Yes.
fasting, whether it's a
Yes.
day, a week, or at a quarter, or longer,
Yes.
across the board. And it was, people say that's religious reasons, okay, but it's also health reasons.
Yes.
Do you think that people doing that at a greater extent, be it intermittent fasting, 16/8, or take a day that you're just not going to eat from sun up to sundown? That would be beneficial in addition to modifying a diet.
Yeah, great question. And I would say, the best part about nutrition is you can be the scientist and you can be the guinea pig.
Mm,
And so, honestly, I think everyone needs to try it for themselves because I would say 60% of people do incredibly well in intermittent fasting or fasting for the whole day. But there's a subset of people that their biochemistry is not meant to fast. And unfortunately, there's no good test to know who can do it and who doesn't. So you have to be kind of a petri dish of one. And there's a great physician, I don't know if you've heard of him, Dr. Walter Longo, who has done a fair bit of work in fasting. And what I guess I subscribe to what he says is he said, we're living in a wild time when the retail hours of our digestive tract is 24/7.
yes.
We're like a quick trip.
Always grazing or eating, or it's
Exactly.
everywhere. Gas stations, grocery stores,
Exactly.
it's everywhere you go, someone's grabbing a bag of something.
I know. And he said, we were not designed that way. We were designed for intermittent fasting, for you fast when you sleep. And so I love that thinking because he goes, open the retail hours like business hours, 10 to 7, right?
Do
So,
you think that the overindulgence, we'll call it, of people in general? So if they're going to eat breakfast in the morning, they're probably hungover. If they're on a golf, well, let's take the golf trip person. They're
yeah,
probably
yeah,
hungover at least a little bit. That indulge a little too much at dinner. They
yeah,
eat, let's say, a big breakfast, and then while they're out there playing, they're eating crackers and chips and cookies and other things they might not
sure.
supposed to eat. But they never give the digestive system a chance to recover. And even if they're back at their jobs or offices and so on, and they have something in the drawer, do you think that uh, what's the word I want to use? The growth of the use of antacids, which is what I can gather is largely due to not enough acid in the system and the
Yes,
regurgitation of food, as opposed
yes.
to having too much. So, do you think that the constant eating, grazing, eating too much is leading to a drop in acid production because the body just can't produce enough, and now it's having to
Well, I
digest without it?
I think you're onto something. And I would even maybe back up in the row of that and
Hmm.
say, there obviously it's habitual eating, right? I mean, you're not even thinking and you're doing it. But beyond that, it's for soothing the nervous system. And this is where saliva gets involved. We have two sides to our nervous system, which I know you know. One is the fight or flight system. And certainly as a golfer, you want to minimize your release of adrenaline for fight or flight, because that makes, that takes you out of the zone.
Hmm.
It doesn't allow you to focus. And you want to emphasize part of the zone or part of the flow system, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. And not to throw big words out, I like to think of sympathetic nervous system as being foot on the gas and parasympathetic foot on the brake. And when we oscillate, typically we're meant to oscillate day in and day out of these two systems at all times. When we get stuck on high, or let's say you have that golf tournament all weekend, likely if we were to do a measurement, we would see you are in fight or flight. You're in that highly alert phase.
Cortisol production shoots up, everything.
Yes, exactly. And so, one of the ways our body naturally soothes itself to bring it back into parasympathetic is munching,
Hmm.
chewing, because it produces saliva, and saliva is bi-directional communication with the nervous system. When you have enough saliva, it signals the side of the nervous system which is called restore and grow. Parasympathetic is the side of the nervous system where we repair and regenerate. And so by munching or having snacks and grab and go and that type of thing, it's our body's way of soothing itself to get into that side of the nervous system, because we are unable to, because we're in such high fight or flight.
That's very interesting. So
Yeah.
their nervous system ratcheting up because of the situation they're in is
Yes.
playing and having a large impact on their eat overindulging and eating,
Yes.
which
Yes.
just it
And
just and then it just snowballs from there.
yes. And I also would say something easy, if this is clicking with people now, is to realize when you're in that golf tournament or playing at high stakes that you're where is your breathing? Often it's shallow breathing, which is strengthening the fight or flight, high adrenaline, cortisol nervous system. And to get into the parasympathetic, it's slow breathing. It's really adapting. And maybe you've dealt with this or used it yourself, but the 4 by 4 by 4 breathing
Yeah, the
system,
box
which
breathing.
is, yeah, box breathing, exactly right. Because that helps shift the body naturally into the parasympathetic. So likely you won't need as many munch
I
snacks.
had what was as Alexander Romagnoli, I think was his.
Oh,
He was on about 2 years ago, and he
yeah.
had worked with Patrick McEwen
Yes.
on nasal breathing and what was the I don't
Wim Hof,
well, yeah, it was the Wim Hof, but there was a name I don't want, I don't think it was it tantric breathing.
diaphragmatic breathing.
Well, there was diaphragm. There's a whole bunch of them, and it was a
Yeah.
fascinating. I mean, we did his. He was over in Rome, I think, when we did his
Oh,
episode.
wow.
So we did it transcontinental. But it was. I had read Patrick's book, and then James Nestor's book
Yes.
was very good. I think James was the first one I read. Dan Hellman, who is a trainer and therapist, very well known
Yes.
in the golf world,
Yeah.
had James on during COVID, just trying to do something during COVID. And I saw that, and I know Dan, I reached out. He said, yeah. And so I got James's book. And then, of course, he worked with Patrick. I've got Patrick's. And it just one
Yes.
thing led to another. You can't ever connect the
Yes.
dots going forward. It's always backwards. But yeah,
Yes,
that's very
exactly.
interesting that the breathing. So breathing, the situation you're in, high stress, whether it's in
Yes.
your professional, your personal, or your,
Or perceived. I mean,
yes.
even thinking about a tournament, you can get into high stress.
Yeah, so you go, so the stress kicks in, the nervous system kicks in, the breathing shallows, and the saliva is reduced, I'm assuming, so if,
Correct.
and
Yes.
then so you
Because,
need to
yeah.
choose something to get it going again, get the juices flowing.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Well, and you think about how we were hardwired when we were little. One of the first things we did was to soothe ourselves by suckling.
Hmm.
So sipping on a bottle would naturally bring the system into parasympathetic, which is regeneration and growth. So that was so important when you're little. And then as we've gotten older, our system is hardwired for that. It's just we have not adopted all of the habits that We need to enjoy moving into parasympathetic. So the saliva thing is curious. If I can just take a moment,
Absolutely. Yes.
most people don't think of their saliva very often,
I don't think they think of it at all
but
unless they got something they got to get out of their mouth.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I was just fascinated when I realized that we produce 2 liters of saliva every day. That's 2 Coke bottles, right? And we recycle 1 liter of it. So now it becomes messengers for the body. So that's really key, number one. And secondly, checking our saliva 4 times a day can allow you to know where you need to navigate and what tools from a toolkit you want to reach into to reestablish that nervous system balance. So the first thing when you get up in the morning, check, am I dry? Am I wet? What's going on? And then right before lunch, right before dinner, and right before bed. So again, in tournament style, when you get up, halfway through the tournament, at the end of the tournament, where am I at? How do I need to soothe my body?
And
And
there's a test
probably,
for that. Not to interrupt you, but there's testing that someone could do. Very simple, effective saliva test.
yeah, you know what? Unfortunately, it's not commercially available yet.
Okay.
It's just in study, and because they measure flow rate. So they measure how many milliliters you're releasing of saliva every moment, allows
Uh-huh.
you to know where you are with the nervous system. But what we found is subjectively, you can tell when you're juicy and not. and so if you find yourself kind of dry, the first thing to do is simple. You can actually take lozenges. You can do essential oil lozenges, you can do Ricola, you can do lemon drops. That's soothing and suckling, and with the particular elements in it, like lemon is very, as they call sialagogue, which is kind of a fun word to say, producing saliva. And that can be, so just having a couple of lozenges in your pocket when you're golfing can be so important for that nervous system tie-in, because you are right. So I'm sorry, we probably went off on a cliff,
Oh, it's
but
okay.
when
Cliffs are good in this show.
when you're high arousal, uh, what happens is our saliva drops naturally. And part of the reason is, why do you need to be digesting food if you're in a critical fight or flight or freeze mode? And secondly, our immune system goes on suspension. We don't process anything of the microbes coming into the body because the body says, I don't know if I'm going to be around, because fight or flight or freeze, right? So both of those systems suspend themselves until saliva flow comes back. And and maybe you can relate to this, maybe this has happened to you, but on a tournament and you get off a tournament and you're fine, 2 or 3 days later, you get sick. And often part of that is the insult to the immune system because you were in the fight or flight system so long.
Yeah.
And,
There
go
was a
ahead.
person. I
Sorry.
usually do not. I'll post on social media. I usually don't comment uh, for obvious reasons because it becomes such a cesspool. But
Yes.
one of the things that one of our staff started, and I kind of get into a little bit, but I was Golf Digest had posted about Bryson
Okay.
DeChambeau, how many balls he was hitting at the practice range at the Masters, and we are very firm believers in the Tiger, the way the Tiger did it. Not that we weren't. I mean, the way he did it, we obviously knew that was a very good way to do it, and that you do your preparation
Sure.
ahead of time, and then you use the early in the week. You stay sharp, and maybe Tiger used. It's famous. He would do 9 holes usually a day and take a day off, and then he's because he knew, and he said this in interviews. He knew that the emotional, physical, and mental toll on him for that week was going to be off the charts. And to
Yes.
your point, that for anyone that's played maybe in a big event and they come up, either they get sick a couple of days after, or they just have like, why can't I get out of bed today, or why am I dragging so much
Yes.
at work?
Yes.
The emotional toll on that. But the point on the post was, we said, why is he doing this? Bryson could. I mean, we know he's 28 or 32 or whatever he is, and he's his
Young.
physical peak. But there is as you said, the parasympathetic, the nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, the mental capacity that it takes to go through the grind to winning a Masters, and all these things that are more so than just the physical capability of somebody who's in their physical
Yes.
prime. And these younger kids, you look them up and, oh, you don't know what the new science is. I said, well, the human body hasn't really changed that much in
Exactly.
millennia. Like what's internal, not just what's on the,
Yes,
they see on the external.
exactly.
But
Exactly.
that is a very difficult thing to try to get through to somebody who either hasn't worked with someone like yourself or hasn't experienced enough times in a highly stressful sports situation.
Right.
And I'm not going to say that I'm better than them because I played at a higher level. If they played in their D flight and they're trying to win, the motions and things that they're going through are very similar. Just the golf
Yes.
skill is different.
Yes. Yeah. Brilliant point. And that is such a good point. And I would say one thing that I learned, after these Olympics was listening to the number of athletes, no matter what their discipline or sport was, the number of them that talked about recovery days,
Mm-hmm.
talked about days where they played less or they worked out less or whatever, because we need that regeneration and growth side of it. And much of it is autophagy, right? We have to be able to get rid of all those metabolites and all those small micro tears that happens when you're swinging and walking the course. We have to repair those at some point, and that's so key.
Is there, as far as because you're obviously in a physical sport. I mean, golf is not football, it's not hockey, but you're
Yeah.
out there for hours at a time. And you're out there for
Yes.
multiple days at a time for most of the events, regardless of what level it's at. If somebody is either on a golf trip or they're at a golf event and they're competing, are there certain protein types that are more adaptive to allowing recovery, allowing sleep without detrimental effects to the individual?
Yes, I would say so. And maybe these are words you've definitely heard before, but it's more in the branched chain amino acids.
Okay.
So we have, 8 or 9 amino acids, depending on which researcher you follow. And in that, there are certain amino acids we can't produce because we make 22 amino acids, but these key 8 are called branched chain amino acids. So I would definitely take them in a protein powder. Now there's many different sports bars that are geared toward including branched chain amino acids.
Hmm.
And I would say one of the best things are a handful of nuts.
Any particular
Because
kind?
no, all nuts are acceptable.
Huh.
I would
Very
say
interesting.
that depends on individuals to see how well that sits with their gut. That's what I find is there's a called a kind of the new sassy thing in gastroenterology and microbiome, which I know Dr. Goyle talked about, was that there's a transit time in our digestive tract. And in that transit time, then it becomes, if you have a slow digestion or fast digestion. And that's where you make a determination on whether you want animal protein or vegetarian protein. Now, there may be philosophies of why you adopt more vegetarian lifestyle,
Hmm.
but truthfully, often it's biochemistry driven. And if you have a faster transit time, that's when they say you invite animal proteins more because you process those so quickly.
I would have to imagine that's gets into some age specificity as well, because I've noticed
Yes,
the older I've gotten,
absolutely.
I mean, I used to be able to eat a full strip steak or ribeye at 9 o'clock at night and not have any problem going to sleep and staying
Mhm.
asleep. I don't
Yeah,
know, I'm in my early 50s. If I eat
yeah.
steak, it better be by 5 o'clock. And
Exactly.
I'm usually in bed right around 11ish, give or take 20 minutes.
Yeah, yeah,
But if I eat steak, and now it's fillet, it's usually a 6 ounce fillet. But if I eat, there's
yeah.
no way I could eat a full ribeye
Isn't that crazy?
after like 6 o'clock is really pressing it for me. And
Pushing it,
I
yeah.
better take some hydrochloric tablets with that if I want to not
Yes,
wake up in the middle of
exactly.
the night, feel like there's a cement block on my chest.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I'd
Well,
have to
and
think that it's age. That there is some age relationship to that as well.
yes, absolutely. And I would say thank you for inviting in a supplement because often people suffer after a meal trying to digest it into the evening or sometimes during the day, something blows up and they get bloated. And I'm like, you know, I guess meeting with a nutritionist would be important at that point to just see what quality supplements you would take, whether it would be hydrochloric acid, because
Hmm.
often we don't have enough acid, or it could be digestive enzymes. You need a little extra boost to help your body digest down food. And both of those, and actually aloe vera juice, if anybody has GERD or refluxive disease, taking a little aloe vera juice is so healing for the body and just helps the overall processing of digestive tract.
Yeah, so bombarding people, they're not going to know what to do. So you can't eat as much. You got to have handle your stress better, uh, eat healthier. Take this with yeah. The
Yeah.
interesting thing about supplements is people will take them, and I only know this because I had to experience it myself. Because I was a supplement guy, I used to train all the time. But it's like until you figure out what you're deficient in,
Yes.
how do you know what you're taking is
Yes.
actually working?
Exactly.
And
Exactly. No, I mean, there's more sophisticated tests nowadays, but it's still just please know. I mean, as I know that you know, it's just a complicated system because
mm,
we have nerves involved, we have musculature involved, we have the squirt and the release of enzymes involved. All of those systems have to be well tuned in order to handle a good meal. And so any one of those things could go down, and there'd be a different treatment modality that you'd want to invite in. And probably one of the biggest things I've seen, and I don't know how this fits with people you've coached and yourself, is the speed of eating. Uh,
yes.
a little trivia is our great grandmother, if we had a chance to talk with her, she likely would chew foods in a day about 200 times. So one is the nature of the food. Oh, I keep losing my earpiece. I'm so sorry.
You're okay.
uh, and nowadays, the average adult, and I would love everyone just to reflect on this, how fast you eat. The average adult chews 60 times a day
Wow, less than a
versus
third.
200. Yes. And part of it is the ultra processed food. Quite frankly, you don't need to chew as much, right? And so I would say it's just slowing down the process of eating makes a big difference. Now, I'm not a big one. There was a few years ago where on Indiegogo they had a vibrating fork and it would vibrate. I know, right? I don't even know if that was completely funded, but I don't think you have to go that extreme. But just being very aware of how fast you inhale food because you're disrupting the enzymatic and the beautiful flow of nutrients in the body.
I will never forget freshman year in high school biology. Only because we went over this so many times. And Dr. Charles, if you're out there listening, yes, it's been 40 years and I still remember this. But in biology class, the one thing they said, the start of the digestive system happens in your mouth with your saliva and your
Mm-hmm.
enzymes. And it before it gets into the stomach and the esophagus and the stomach and the intestinal tract, but it starts with enzymes within the mouth and the saliva. So, what are some ways that people out there listening to this or watching this, if it's on YouTube, can improve their saliva and or their enzymes to start their digestive process better, so that by the time it gets to the other parts of their system, it's not having to work overtime or do double duty for things that should have been taking place in the mouth. If people
Yes,
are if they're chewing enough or not enough.
yes. Great, great question. And I would say there's three ways. And they may seem kind of boring. There are
Well,
things your mother probably told
boring is
you.
usually the most effective.
Yeah. The first is just checking your stress level before you eat. And that's just a mental like check in, if you will.
Hmm.
And I use a scale 1 to 5, 5 being pretty high stress. Like you've just come out of some kind of, round or
Yeah,
you're
you just three
stressing
putted the
about.
last hole, or you
Yes,
lost a bet because you
exactly.
hit out of bounds on 18, or you're in a work and you lost a deal, or whatever
Yes,
argument with your
exactly.
spouse or kids.
Yes, exactly. And all of those make a big difference because we noticed there's a great study out there that showed that people who watched the news during when they ate had more digestive disruption than
Hmm.
people who would just listen to music. So and so during COVID, interestingly enough, I did a study with kids where we hummed. So what they found is they were working online at home, right? And their mothers would then be serving them dinner and be so frustrated because they would be so not manageable, right? They'd be irritated, crying, all these emotional outbursts. And so what we did was we had them hum a song, and Mary had a little lamb.
Wow.
And what we found out is that soothed their nervous system, because our digestion only happens, as you mentioned, when saliva is released and we're moving into parasympathetic, putting our foot on the brake of the nervous system. And so if you're plowing in, rushing in to eat a meal and you're stressed, or you only have X amount of minutes to eat, that stress itself insults the digestive tract tremendously. So the first is, as I say, kind of boring, just checking in to see where I am with stress. And if you're high stress, then making sure you hum, making sure you do a breathing technique, maybe even suckle on a lozenge before you enjoy a meal, having a glass of cup of tea before, again, seems a little pesky, but
Would you
that can
go
be,
for a walk? Would it be as simple as a 15-minute
yes,
walk?
absolutely. Absolutely. Turn on your favorite song, because all of that soothes the body and puts it in position to accept food. So that's the first thing. Secondly is posture.
Mm.
How many of us are busy scooping up food this way, right? And so that becomes important, is just to, again, have that delicious mother's posture, right? Shoulders down, over the stomach, hips in line. And then thirdly, it's so boring, but do nothing but eat and have conversation with people around you. Because when you're busy on the tablet, on the email, on texting, that all is taking yourself in the brain away from that regenerative growth side of the nervous system and put it right back into high cortisol, high fight or flight.
Do you find that most people that they don't come to you until they have a problem, and then you
Yeah.
have to set them back on these simple things, that you don't really see people come to you that don't have much of a problem, and you say, okay, hey, we can just implement these simple ideas like you just did, and you will,
Yes.
the likelihood of you being healthy and not have an avoiding issue is much increased. So I'm assuming that people only come to you like they come to me when their golf game's sideways, and they never come to me when it's doing good. And hey, it's at this level, let's
Yes.
take it to the next one. No, it's like when it went drop down 3 levels. Like, you shouldn't have waited
Yes.
this long. Do you get that quite often?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And we often tease, I mean, this kind of goes for mental health too. Like, everyone should have in their pocket a sports psychologist and a nutritionist, because just like we do a doctor checkup or a dental checkup, we should do a nutritional go through, and we should do mental health, right?
Yeah, I do an extremely thorough blood. Of course, that's a very big scare when someone tells you have that disease. So
Yes.
I do it every
Yes.
year. I do a very extensive testing, blood test. Do it through the Access Labs. I think they take 12
Yes.
vials of blood, do the
Yes.
stool testing, and even the urine test.
Great.
And you learn when you experience life, you live long enough, you're going to have scars,
Yeah.
and you learn that
Yes.
the best defense against health issues is, one is, find someone like you and make sure that you're not having bad habits that are going to lead to
Sure.
disease. But if for some reason you do get them, the best course of action is to find it early. So don't skip these things and just blow it off and say, well, I'm
Exactly.
fine, I don't
Yes.
need this. Get it.
I'm bulletproof.
Yes, I'm bulletproof. Until you have that life altering experience, everyone thinks they are.
Yes.
And then, so don't let yourself get to that level, would be my biggest piece of advice to most people out
Yes.
there.
Exactly. And thank you for sharing that, because that is so key. And I love that you're doing that on a regular basis. It's just like a dental checkup. We
Hmm.
think nothing of twice a year going in and getting it done, whether or not we have problems, right? Because we know that over time it can catch something early to avoid worse problems.
Well,
And that goes for nutrition.
as far as the supplements are concerned, I mean, with the degradation of the soil in this
Yes.
country and around the world, with over farming and chemicals, et cetera, that the nutritional value, depending who you talk to, you obviously know
Yeah.
more than I, but the nutritional value between this generation and the prior two or three is significantly different.
Yeah.
Um, so supplements do play a big role, but if you're not
Sure.
testing, some people do it quarterly even. If you're not
Yeah.
testing, because in particular in the early stages, from what I've seen from
Yes.
friends who have done this, that you
Yeah.
test and then you see what you need to modify, and then eventually, usually after about 18 months, you're dialed into what your system needs versus what
Exactly.
it gets on, it can absorb on its own.
Yeah.
So I think that supplements do play a significant role in today's society, at least.
Yes. Yes. I couldn't agree more. And, one of the things that you're speaking about is tuning up the internal environment to handle the external
Hmm.
environment. And the one thing that I think is most obvious to everyone is our life is completely different than 10 years or 20 years ago
Gosh.
externally. So internally, then our body has had to shift with those changes. So tuning in and getting blood work done and inviting certain supplements in that your body is in tune for makes a big difference. I mean, one of the best things I've seen made the biggest difference in most clients that I've worked with is, which is kind of crazy, but it's taking, as you mentioned, because the soil is I know it's going to get better, but it's kind of bad now.
Mm.
Is taking a liquid drink with our water, which is fumic, Fumic, and fulvic, Fulvic. They come and they're microbes from the soil. And it looks like you're drinking dirt, quite frankly. But it is one of the best things. It cross talks to all of our cells in our body. And our cells invite them in because they recognize that the micronutrients in there are body ready.
So fumic and fulvic.
Yes,
Is there
yes.
an additional name to it, or is it just fumic and
No,
fulvic?
unfortunately, it's that. And I can send you a link of a couple of products, and I have no ties to the products,
Yeah,
but
I'll put them in your summary, and we'll
yeah,
push it out there. And
okay.
I'm sure everybody,
Sounds good.
it's always worth trying. You said we're all so
Yeah.
different. It's worth taking it once to see the effect it has, or a couple times.
Yes. And especially for spring and summer, quite frankly, because we spend more time outdoors. Never mind if you're a golfer or not, you spend more time outdoors. And also because of the weather changes, our skin is releasing and evaporating more nutrients out of our cells. So it's important to replenish those back in.
As I watch nutrition, broad spectrum of people across social media and online, the one thing that I cannot get in my own head an answer to, and I wanted to ask you when you agreed to come on. You have people who they're more or less just health conscious. That maybe those people they're not very physically. Let's say they're just going through daily life. Your average person going through daily life, they're not overly exerting themselves, but they're walking or they're engaging in some sort of physical activity, but they work, they have a family, and so on. There's more fasting and less eating for most of those people for better health. But then, and caloric restriction, autophagy, all those things that we discussed. But then you have the
Yes.
athletic person, because you have worked with some very prolific athletes,
Yes.
and obviously their calorie demand and their physical exertion is much higher. How do you both, or how do you work with the athlete so that they're not overindulging, and now it's working in reverse order? And how do you get? I know it's a two-part question, a loaded question.
Yeah.
How do you get someone who's just your average person who wants to be healthier? Maybe they want to lose 10 to 15 pounds, or need to lose 10 to 15, because that's two completely different dynamics due to
Yes.
the lifestyle and demands
Yes.
of their physical exertion and energy levels.
Yes. The first thing I do is I check in with the appetite they have to, number one, make change, and number two, be able to invite the foods in to their pantry and refrigerator, because we all know we eat what's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then obviously, if you're on the road quite a bit, then you're eating at restaurants. So I just want to check on their appetite for how much they want to change. And that all varies because I'll say if brain fog is there, if energy depletes throughout the day, or as an athlete, if your injury rate is going up,
Mm, very
maybe
interesting.
those are, yeah, concerns to let's focus nutritionally, number one. Secondly, I would say that for the person that is the average person that's just trying to get a little bit healthier, a lot of times it's just adding food into their diet, because the average person eats the same 20 foods every day, or I mean in a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just saying, look at your fabric of food. Now, if we look at your fruits, we could add in kiwi or add in papaya. Have you ever thought of that? What would that look like? Can you go and put that on your grocery list and buy it and have it prepared for you to be able to take with you? So it's just simple kind of thing for an athlete. Now, I will say, number one, I always check in mindset. I believe mindset drives everything. And so I want to know how much they believe in the food that they're eating, number one. And secondly, what kind of changes can we invite? Like you say, time is so valuable. So nowadays, there's so many prep systems where you can get food delivered, healthy, high quality, performance food right to your doorstep. So sometimes it might meaning inviting that in to have that done so that you don't have to worry about that. Because part of it is cognitive fatigue. I mean, how much time do we have to spend or grocery shopping for me? And I was on the founding floor of starting Sprouts Farmers Market. So shame
Good
on
for
me for
you.
saying this, but grocery shopping is not all that much fun for me.
No, and I bet I'm there at least once, almost once a day.
Yeah.
At least every other
Yeah.
day I'm at the grocery store.
Yeah, and that's beautiful because the more idea, when you're buying more perishable food, the more often you shop, the better it is for you. So the first is I just ask everyone, like, do you enjoy shopping or not? And if you don't, let's find ways to get the food to you that you need that you can avoid cognitive fatigue. And if you enjoy shopping, let's add some adventure to it. Let's add some new recipes that you can try some new foods or new spices or new herbs. And then I'm a big one of getting people to garden, whether they're an athlete or whether they're
Oh, I'm
the
terrible.
casual
You got your work cut out for me on gardening. I tried it during COVID. I have a whole new respect for farmers and
I
I
know.
honestly, I've always been an organic guy. I try to buy organic whenever possible and the free
Sure.
range and grass
Yeah.
fed. But after going through my farming fiasco, I how somebody can be an organic farmer is like
I
it's taking the
know.
hardest thing in the world, which is farming, and then just putting 100 multiplier on top of it. Like
Yes,
it's
I know.
it's
I
amazing. All the
agree with
respect in the
you.
world to farmers.
I agree. And nothing brings me more joy when I've gardened well, and
Yes.
nothing drops me down in a devastated state when I haven't gardened well.
Like you sit there and you
So,
watch and it gets you excited and you're like, wow, I actually helped produce this. I mean,
yes.
sun and water in the soil and the plant after millennia has probably larger impact on that than I have. But it's nice that you
Yes.
plant it and you nurture it and you get it to grow. And
Yes,
then when all of a sudden it
exactly.
dies about a week before you're supposed to pick it out, like, wait a second. It's
I
like the
know.
biggest letdown.
I know. I couldn't. And I'm having such a struggle right now growing. I'm in Arizona and
Hmm.
I'm trying to grow basil. And I go out and nurture it and I talk to it. And the next day, it looks like it's ready to croak. So I know that feeling. So there's a great movie if you haven't seen now, it's several years old now, but it was a couple from New York that moved out to LA to actually start a garden. And it's
Hmm.
called Big Little Farm.
I
I
think I
don't know if
saw
you've,
that. Yes, that was
yeah.
that did the the soil. He would use it like reuse it and
Yes,
everything. Yes,
yes,
very
yes.
very cool documentary
So
movie.
that's actually a farm nowadays. It's Apricot Lane Farm. And my goal is someday to go and work. They have internships, so you can go work 6 months. And I so want to do that. I want to learn all their beautiful techniques and their patience.
I watched that early in COVID, and that's what spurred me on to go to build my own
Oh, yes,
6x8 garden bed that's 24 inches
yes,
deep, and I was all gung ho. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have all this great food and vegetables, and about
yes.
half of it worked,
Oh,
and now
okay.
it's
Don't
just
lose
sitting there.
hope, though.
Now, I do have a rosemary. God, it's a bush. It started as a little thing that I got at Kroger or Publix, and now it's a bush, and I got to give it away. There's so much growing out of that thing.
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, you know what? They just did a very interesting study cognitively by sniffing rosemary, just sniffing it for 5 to 10 minutes a day elevates your cognitive function by 30%
Geez,
and
there you go.
alleviates, yes, Alzheimer's.
And the back nine of it,
So,
you just pull out a couple sprigs of rosemary and
exactly.
inhale, take 10 deep inhales, and you're all good. You
Yeah,
shoot your
maybe
career low.
attach it to your bag and sniff.
You developed a kit. Let me get the name of it. I even wrote it down so I wouldn't screw it up. The
Oh,
Renewal
bless you.
Kit for travelers.
Yes,
And given that golf, people will go on destination trips. Again, I'm in Hilton Head. People have been coming here for decades. They fly in, they play golf. They're here for a week. Their family, of course, is here as well. But with the
sure.
advent of places like Bandon Dunes and going to Ireland and Scotland and these
Yeah.
all different stream song, and there's a litany of them. People go on these golf trips, and or people are obviously we're traveling more, flying more for business than at any
Yes.
point
Yes.
in modern history. I couldn't think of a better thing to discuss than your renewal kit. I
Oh,
know we touched a little
thank
bit
you.
on some of the things that for like
Sure.
hangovers or if you had one too
Yeah,
many,
I
but
know exactly. Probably not a
and
good segue there.
no, but the saliva and how that works into I wanted because there's a correlation between what you're taking and being on an airplane and your saliva and the stress your
Yes.
body goes through and everything. So I want to jump into that and
Sure.
discuss that first because I'm sure that so many people out there, regardless of if they're playing professionally or they're just average golfers, they're your average American, they're working, flying, all these things that they would love to hear how their life could become
Sure.
easier and better by following some simple protocols.
Sure. And please know the product came through me. I went back to school and I chose Neuroscience of Taste for my doctorate. And no disrespect to any US schools, American schools, but I couldn't find a program that was talked about taste bud physiology. And so I went over to France, to
I was going to
Paris,
say it's
to,
got to be in France.
yes, exactly.
I went to I've taken some of Guy Voyer's classes, and his anatomy classes
Oh,
are off the charts.
yes, yes. So I enjoyed that, and in it, I wanted to study taste buds, and so just a little bit of background, and I was hell bent for leather for testing state. I really wanted to understand why people liked what they liked and why they were so sure that they didn't like what they didn't like,
Hmm.
because I felt like it was in taste bud maturation. Because as you mentioned, when you prune bushes, everything grows, and then you prune it back. Well, I figured taste buds were the same way. There's a maturation process, and maybe at some point there's an insult to that process, right? So I went to a French professor and I was all excited talking about this. And he's like, sweetheart, you can study taste buds till you're blue in the face. It's not about taste buds, it's about the quality of your saliva. And I thought, holy Hannah, I have been in nutrition for 40 years. I have never heard this. Then I came back to Scottsdale and met with a Mayo Clinic aeronautical medicine physician who said, it's curious that our saliva drops 30 to 50% when we travel. That would be something to study. So, interestingly enough, that's what led me into this path. And what I found out is our saliva drops, it's a little bit akin to the fact of when dogs hear a noise that we humans can't
Hmm.
hear and they begin howling. Well, every time we jump on an airline, our nervous system is on high detection, and jet engine noise vibration sends our nervous system into a cave. So we stand kind of like a Navy SEAL, if you will.
Hmm.
So you may not be a nervous traveler, but your internal environment treats it as a significant insult to the nervous system. So, because I mentioned earlier, saliva was bidirectional. So, when you have good saliva flow, you're balancing your nervous system. Well, when you drop saliva, that gets our nervous system stuck on fight or flight or freeze. Well, it turns out the other way. If we stimulate saliva flow, it also swings the body into both sides of the nervous system. So I created in the kit a lozenge that you chew, and part of it is essential oil, peppermint, ginger, and lemon, which stimulates saliva. So now you're juicy. It
Hmm.
sends the note to the nervous system, hey, everything's cool here. You may not think so, but we got good saliva, so we can keep our immune system going, our digestive tract going. So it almost is like when you fly, it's the most unnatural situation we ever put our body in. And by taking the renewal kit for travelers, it brings back the body to a natural situation like you are on Earth. So that's in the kit. And then and I did it whole foods. So there's no nutraceutical, pharmaceutical, none of that. It's all whole food. So you could even open up a capsule and taste the food. And there's elderberry because that's again been shown, especially during COVID,
Hmm.
it's been shown that it helps the respiratory tract during travel. And then the broccoli sprouts, which helps our cells take out the trash. So it's that little kit that you can bolster yourself, and it soothes the digestive tract, boosts the immune system, and then regulates the nervous system in the way that we were designed.
It almost counteracts the things that they're giving you while you're on an airplane. Would you like a
Yes,
drink? Would you like
yes,
crackers?
yes,
Would you
yes,
would you like these cookies? It's almost
yes,
like the things that they're giving you. I don't think they're doing this on purpose. At least I hope not.
yeah,
They are counteractive to what you should be doing.
yes,
And then you have
exactly.
this packet, and it's very. I mean, it's for the people who I think you have. Is it 10 packets or 5 round trips? So you're one each way.
Yes, yes, thank
um,
you.
and it's
Yes,
not very expensive at all. And of course, we'll have links to that at your page.
sure.
Renewal Kit for Travelers, that its own website, its
Yes,
own social media,
yeah.
and we'll have links to all of those things. People
Yes,
can
and I
access that
just
very easily.
wanted to be value added to sports people and to just the common traveler because I wanted to put joy back into travel.
It's very difficult,
Yes,
especially when you're jumping time zones.
yes,
Does it have an effect, a positive effect on the, because the rule of thumb is if you travel time zones that it's going to take a day per hour of difference that you're going to. Does it help speed that process up at all?
yes, yes,
Okay.
and it does. And I think my if I had a magic mirror, I would say very soon we will stop that conversation of time zones because that's an external environment.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're talking about is internal environment. So Renewal Kit for Travelers is doing to soothe the body into like it's on earth, right? So not that you're up in air and part of the immunity and the broccoli sprouts helping the cells take out trash, it also helps with the radiation that we get exposed to. Now, many people talk about that, but there's a fair bit of radiation and God bless anybody that's listening that's in flight profession, whether you're a pilot or a flight attendant, but your risk for cancer is so much higher. And part of that is because we have nothing as a flame retardant for the cells. And that's where the broccoli sprouts comes in.
Why is it that I would think that airlines or pilots or flight attendants would be promoting this or calling you and saying, "Hey, we want you to be our official." Uh, I don't, is supplement the correct way to describe it? We
Well, I
want the
call it a travel supplement system.
travel systems. I mean, I'm just sitting here
Yeah.
dumbfounded why somebody, an airline or even like a NetJets in particular, they're at the highest of
Yes.
levels of customer
Yes.
service, why they wouldn't offer that.
I'm hoping one day that happens. We
Hopefully the
launched
show will spur
exactly.
somebody on to call you. I've
Yes,
gotten a number of
yes.
calls from guests who have had some very interesting. This is a guest, a very good friend of mine was on here and got connected to Elon Musk about a year and a half ago, about 2 years ago,
Whoa.
because of his episode on this show. And I was about ready to just pack it up. I said, the show's not really doing much for anybody. And then he
Yeah,
called me and says, "You're never going to guess who I got connected to, because somebody heard me on your show. And then they said
yeah.
they knew somebody, and that just made this whole thing. So
Oh,
hopefully one of the
that's
airlines or
magic.
somebody will reach out to you."
Yeah, well, and part of it I think was we launched during COVID. And I mean, well, we launched right before COVID. So we had all access to all of these pilot associations and these airport lounges where we could give away free product. We were so excited. And then, boom, COVID
Mm.
hit and everybody clamped down.
Oh,
So we're
man.
just kind of crawling out of that now. But that's my goal is just to be value added. And I agree. I would love NetJets or someone because I just want to have them serve their customers better.
Yeah, you need one of these. Bryson DeChambeau's, obviously his social media is huge, and he's
Yes.
flying because Live is playing all over the world. It's somebody that
Yes.
has a big social media influence. That you just need one of them to say,
Yes.
"Hey, going on this
Exactly.
flight. We're flying to Dubai. It's a
Yes.
26-hour flight, and here's what I'm
Right.
taking." And
Yeah.
then they get off and like hardly anything's changed, ready to go.
Yeah.
I mean, that would
Yeah.
be just
Exactly.
great
The
to see.
tagline is "Be ready when you get there."
Yes, it's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Between the least thing I want somebody to take from this is they can drink with impunity and just stay up as long as they want to on a flight, and then they can pop these this
Yes.
packet that you have, and it's like they're Superman. They can just get off the
Yes.
flight and shoot 66. That would be a perfect
Exactly.
world, wouldn't it?
Only, boy, I will hire you right away if you get that message out.
What is as far as water? because I know water is a big
Yes.
thing. I try to tell my mom, she drinks water all day long. I said, you realize you're flushing your system. You're not really adding
Yeah.
to it. Well,
Yes.
you're supposed to drink this. I said, oh, really? You're going to the bathroom too much. That means you're
Yes.
drinking too much water.
Yes.
As and in particular, as a large part of this discussion is revolved around saliva. What role
Yes.
does water hydration play in that?
Yes, great question. And I would also talk to your mama and tell her it because she is drinking so much water. Kudos for that. However, the water isn't retained in her cells. It's going through her cardiovascular system. That's why she has to go to the bathroom so often.
Mm,
So we want to change. So one of the first things to do is to get that mixture of fulvic acid
hmm
uh, in to have her put in water and see if that makes a big difference. That's number one. And secondly, yes, hydration does make a difference with our saliva. The tricky part is because saliva is so driven by the nervous system, we don't know between individuals what it actually. So I can't give you a prescription to
Right.
say X amount of hydration, or when you have low hydration, it produces low saliva. That equation isn't there because there's so many factors into producing saliva, and mainly it's part of nervous system health,
That's
honestly.
amazing. I don't think anybody I've ever heard or talked to, and I followed some pretty in-depth people, Paul Chek
Yeah.
and Peter Attia, Charles Poliquin, Andy
Yes.
Galpin. I
Yes.
have not heard any of them. Surprised you haven't been
Yes.
invited on. Andrew Huberman. I have
I
not heard.
know. I want to so badly get on Andrew
I have not
Huberman.
heard anybody, Dr.
Yeah.
Rhonda Patrick, anybody talk about
Yes. I
the it.
know.
You would never think that the effect of saliva is done. You'd always think
Yeah.
it's hydrogen or not hydrated
Hydration.
related
Yes.
and not nervous
Exactly.
system related. That is, and
Yes.
that relates. So anybody who is wondering,
Yes.
why would you have somebody who's a saliva expert on a golf podcast? Well, if golf is all mental or it's
Yes.
90% mental and you're
Yes.
getting
Yes.
nervous and you're having
Yes.
trouble,
Yes.
performing in the final round or whatever you're trying to do, and you notice that your mouth's a little dry, it's your mental
Yes.
approach, and it's
Yes.
not to drink more water. That's not the solve.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. It's to soothe yourself. It's to find one of the tools or tricks we've talked about: sucking on a lozenge, reaching in and doing deep breathing, listening to good, beautiful music, to anything to shift into that side of the nervous system. Yeah.
It's like I've had Ben Shear on. Ben is he's regarded as one of the top, if not the top, trainer and therapist in golf.
Yeah.
Uh, Daniel Berger is who's come back from injury now is one of Ben's students. But I one of Ben's things was that there was a fella in one of the seminars that I watched that said that he had a flexibility problem, and Ben said, "How long have you been stretching?" So I've been stretching for 9 months. He said, "You have a stability problem. You don't have a flexibility problem."
Exactly.
Meaning, and you can stretch all you want to, but if the joint is not stable, the
Yes.
body and the brain are never going
Exactly.
to let that muscle and soft tissue
Yes.
relax. To me,
Yes.
it's so analogous to the discussion we're having that people are trying to do the wrong solution and they're looking in the wrong place.
Yes, brilliant. That was a great analogy because that is so similar to this whole conversation around the nervous system. Our whole life is run by our nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have brain fog, the first thing I would look at is how often are you stuck on high in the fight or flight system versus allowing your body to tease over to the regenerative side.
I always wonder, and talking to you has kind of reinvigorated that thought process. As you look back, or as I look back on what was some of the causes of my disease. And when I look
Yes,
back,
yes.
I got tested. This was going back to 2001 or two, when the Olympics were coming to Atlanta back then. And I was
Yeah,
training
yeah,
back then at Health South before they ran into their financial issues and everything
yeah,
else, was a place that you had a PGA membership. You could train at their facility. Uh, Complimentary as part of your dues. And within this building, they had a psychologist who had a lot of friends who were psychologists and sports psychologists that were working with the Olympians. And they had a system that measured how well you could put yourself into the zone. And you
mm-hmm,
had the whole halo on it. It measured all your
mm-hmm.
brain waves and everything. And
Yes,
so he showed me how to do it. And you basically followed a cursor on a screen, and you had to keep it flat as possible for as long
yeah,
as possible. And we did a couple warm ups, and I did it. And he said, "Do that again." I said, something wrong? He said, it might be. Checks everything. We do it 2 or
Yeah,
3
yeah.
times. And he said, you've maxed it out. You are 99.9% ability to put yourself in the zone. Like, he goes, you're Olympian and level and higher. I said, okay, cool. He said, now we're going to test your ability to get yourself out of it. And we did it
Yes.
again. And I kind of got poofing out my chest and I thought I killed it again. He said, we're supposed to like shut yourself off this time. I said, I
Right,
did. He said,
exactly.
no, you didn't. It's like I
You
couldn't.
were
I could
running
get
on
myself
high.
there. I couldn't shut it off. So where I'm going with this is I just my knowing myself and my nature over the years that I've
Yeah.
been on the planet. I press so hard. And I'm not
Yes.
saying I'm any different than anybody else. There's a lot of
Yes.
guys and girls out there
Sure.
who just push and push and push and
Yes.
push and push to make it at the
Yes.
highest level. I never
Yes.
let myself have
Yes.
time downtime.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
when you're going at that level,
Hmm.
you have to learn how to. I
Yes.
had to learn how to shut it off.
Yes.
And now that
Exactly.
my body's too beat up and I'm too
Oh.
old to go back and try to make it this Champions Tour, I'm
Oh.
not going to do it. But at least I
Yes.
have the knowledge that I can pass
Yes.
on to somebody else. Like, hey, kid, you need to
Yes.
take a week off. Go to the beach.
Yes.
Go with your boyfriend or girlfriend on a road trip. Go whatever
Yes.
you want to do. Just get away from
Yes.
golf. Go do something
Exactly.
else.
I really hope, I mean, I don't want to get political here, but I hope that we'll make some changes in our education of our children.
Mm.
And one of them would be this exact point: how to rev up and get in the flow, and how to get ourselves revved down.
How do other societies do that? Because they seem to the ones that come to
Yes.
this country, not to get into to race or anything, but the Asian kids seem to excel exceptionally at math
Yes.
and engineering things, but they are
Yes.
seem to be so driven, as do
Yes.
kids from like India. Uh,
Right.
how do because you've worked with kids, you've written a children's
Yes.
book, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yes.
How do kids from those cultures are they able to do that at such a high level? Do they have? I'm assuming they have to have periods that they shut it off as part of their culture. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. And part of it
And
is
wait,
their
before you answer that,
family structure. Yeah.
yes,
Go
before you
ahead.
answer that, the if you look at the LPGA tour, the
Yes.
Korean girls and some of the
Yes.
other foreign girls dominate that tour for the better
Yes.
part. Not that the
Yes.
Americans don't do well, but the foreign girls
Yes.
dominate that tour.
Yes.
There's got to be
Exactly.
there has to be a reason for that.
Yes, and I believe it's all in social structure. Their
Okay.
family unit is so strong that embedded in there are ways, and I, quite frankly, I'm not that close to any of them per se to be able to make a broad comment, but
Hmm.
I believe that they get that nurturing and that turning off being part of their family. Whether they talk it out, whether it's just playing games, whether that's meal times, I believe all of that adds to the mental health to allow them to deregulate.
Wow, that makes total sense. Whether they realize it or not, their brain goes from
Yes,
pure what would it be alpha
yes,
wave to
yes.
to to to
The
beta
delta
wave.
and gamma. Yeah,
Gamma,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. Yep,
So
exactly.
very high stress, and then when they go home and they're playing with their siblings or their parents
Yeah,
or their cats or dogs or grandma,
yeah,
whoever, it's
yeah.
completely different mode.
Right, right.
Now,
And there's such, and there's also another element of, and no disrespect to American children by any stretch, but there's such a caring side of it. Like they know growing up that they will take care of their grandparents forever. In this country and culture, I feel like we kind of deposit our grandparents on the
mm,
curb
mm-hmm.
and they invite them in. I lived in Hawaii for a little bit. And when I was there, I was so amazed at how they would have almost like a wedding style party when grandma or grandpa was moving in back into the family. And I just realized all of that nurturing comes from a place of where you're not focused on yourself, you're focused on others.
I grew up in a very ethnic. Both my parents are as far back as we can tell, are Serbian heritage. Weekends
Oh,
were spent at Serbian Social Center. Obviously, during the week we were in school.
yeah.
But it was very much that way, in that your entire family was around quite a bit, and I think that goes for
Yeah.
any uh, foreign culture, whether you're Italian or German or
Yes. And the
from Latin
ethnicity group.
America, any other country or anywhere around the world. I think that I'm with you that the American culture is lacking in that they value the experience and the knowledge that elders have,
Right.
and here we just seem to toss it to the side and say, well, there's a bunch of new information out there. We don't need yours. Yeah, well,
Yes.
you have no, it's like you don't know what you don't know. That they have
Yes.
60, 70, 80 years of information in their brain that you can read
Yeah.
all the new technology you want to, and it's not going to tell you how to navigate through a system.
Yes. It's so true. One of my missions in life at this point, at my ripe old age, is to bring dignity to our elders as they get older,
Mm.
because I do feel like that's a missing link.
Do you, and not to drag on, but do you find that that generation, given that that the time frame that they grew up, now it's in the they were born in the 40s, so they more
Right.
or less grew up in the 50s. That it was more of an indulgence period in our nation.
Yes.
That it's harder to get them to have a better diet because they're just what's programmed into their DNA.
It is because there was so much scarcity at that time, right? So
Yeah, when they were kids during the
often,
war, yeah,
yes,
rationing and everything
exactly.
else.
And so the positive of that is they will find everything to do with scraps or leftovers. They can manipulate a retired chicken over and over and over, but at the same time they will sit there and eat and eat and eat and eat because they don't know if the meal comes around tomorrow,
Hmm.
even though we know today it will be there, right?
Yeah, I remember both my grandmothers would clean the bones off chicken or steak or whatever we
Yes,
had, and I'm like, "What are you doing? You have no
yes,
idea. You're not
yes,
wanting."
exactly, exactly,
The
exactly.
nutrition scope and tentacles go very far. I'm sure we could talk for hours on end, as
I
we said when
know.
we started. It's
Thank you
hard to
for
believe
this
we blew through an
time.
hour and a half already.
Yes, yes,
Where
exactly.
you have a TED Talk, your TEDx, and we'll have that in the one link. Click to that in the summary. Are you speaking at one of those or anywhere coming up that you can tell people about?
Yes, there's two saliva symposiums. So, and if you want to fly to Italy, you can attend.
That'd be great.
Oops. So sorry.
Where can people either learn more about that if they're in this field or if they're more interested? Can they follow you on uh, somewhere and at some point see that we have it on a
Yes.
website or something that they can download it and
Yes.
watch it?
And I just spoke at an India saliva in symposium and it was virtual. And that is available. And I can give you that link as well
Okay.
if people want to see it, because these are researchers from all over the world that are doing fascinating stuff. I mean, they're researching Alzheimer's 10 years before the plaque formation in the brain happens.
Hmm.
Saliva can pick up a biomarker so we can course correct early on.
Does so how would that's one question I want to ask. I'm glad you brought that up before we signed off. Saliva is a biomarker for testing for things wrong within the human system.
Exactly.
How is that in uh, efficacy in relationship to, let's say, blood marker? I know blood marker sometimes by the time it's in the blood, it's getting it's late stage if it's a disease. How efficient is a saliva test?
Yes, from the saliva researchers I talked to, they say it's liquid gold. Like it's kind of like the saliva biomarkers are showing up as a canary in the coal mine. And for those of you maybe not familiar with that, I guess they had a canary in a coal mine because if there was any toxic fumes coming out of the coal mine before they could detect it, the canary would have an issue.
Hmm.
And so the same thing in saliva is they're detecting, and it's smaller levels of molecules than the blood. So that's what's been kind of a disconnect is we have had blood values, and as you mentioned, that's when the condition or degenerative disease or whatever's going on is kind of pushed past the point where, I mean, it's detected, so we need to have action now. In saliva, they're saying that the liquid gold biomarkers are there so much earlier that we can now address it better. Now, at this point, it's just being commercialized. I mean, COVID again helped by releasing all of those saliva swabs we gave. They were able to identify something, very critical. But I believe we're going to have a spit kit soon. And in that spit kit, before you head off on your next trip, you'll spit and you'll see where your immune system is. You'll see where your nutrients are. And then if you want a biomarker for a degenerative condition, then you would be able to get that. So every day we could have an evaluation of the body to make changes quickly. And that excites me, because I think anytime you can bring self-care into our hands and allow us to have those tools available, that'll be good.
I mean, with the proliferation of Whoop and the Aura Ring and
Yes,
the cardiogram where that's half the
yes,
size of a credit card and you can put your fingers on it and test that has saved so many lives, that to be able to detect how what your health is based off of spitting in a tube, I would
I
assume is
know.
something that they're
I get
scraping, or
excited about that.
it's got to be amazing. Those are the advancements of technology and medicine I think people would be all 100% in for
Yes,
when you look at the medical system. But yeah,
yes,
I will definitely stay on. I'll probably bug you and, hey, when's this coming? I'll be asking you, like, are we there yet? Are we
good.
there yet?
Please,
I'll be
we're
bothering
connected
you on
for
a monthly
life.
basis. You're
Yeah, that's
gonna say,
fine.
no, we're not there. Call me in 3 months.
Yeah, I can blather about this forever, and I can definitely share, who in my world, if there's anybody that you'd like to talk to.
I'd love to. Yeah, that stuff is huge,
Yeah.
especially golfers, as you said. They're around a lot of chemicals that they're spraying on the golf course. They're,
Yes. Yes.
this drives me crazy. I never could understand it, but your golf ball gets stains on it. People will be on the green and they'll lick it before they wipe it off instead of using a wet towel. But the amount of chemicals that golfers are exposed to
Yes.
is on par with farmers, uh,
Yes.
because you're out there for 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours at a time.
I mean,
That
it's been
having
kind of
something like
hidden
that.
for a while, but yeah.
Yes, having something like that could save lives. I mean, I'm sure it will, and that would be
Yeah.
monumental.
Powerful.
That
Yeah.
if we can help you
So
in any way, push that
hopefully,
out there. Let me know.
yeah, so hopefully we've gotten people excited about spit.
Yes, it's crazy. When Ashley messaged me, he said, "Hey, I got someone I think would be great for your show," and he said nutrition. I pulled up your information. I said saliva. I'm like, what is he talking about? And now here we are, an hour and a half after we started, and I'm like, oh my god, I cannot believe how much
Yeah.
saliva plays a role and is effective in how it relates to golf. It's absolutely
Yes.
mind-boggling. But that's the point of the show.
Exactly.
Find people like
Yes,
yourself to get great
exactly.
information out.
Yes. Well, thank
Oh,
you for this time.
thank you, Patty. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. I'm sure everybody's going to find this one of the most interesting ones. If you have questions for Patty, where can people follow you or reach out to you?
I'm on Instagram, and I'm just at Patti Milligan.
Okay.
And I can definitely be reached off my email, which is my last name, first name at gmail.com. So
Awesome.
Milligan Patty at gmail.com.
And as always,
So,
everybody, will have links to all of her sites in the summary. One click, you can reach out to her and you can get your nutrition right. You can start thinking better, playing better, and enjoying life better.
yes,
So everybody,
exactly.
thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time. Thank you, Patty.
Okay. Thank you.